Thank you for having a look at this draft presentation for Monday on authoring volumes. So we could think of this as references in space or an introduction to complexity in XR. So we're mostly going to be dealing with references, citations, and these will all have information about them, which is another discussion, but it's worth noting that they will have some of this at least. So I've been going through all kinds of fun things of making different cubes in space and so on, but we've decided that is just not what we're going to do. It's too messy. So we're not going to have such a thing as a framed workspace and our authoring cube, but we are keeping the authoring cube, which is our name for kind of a sketchpad or notepad or writing area, and then the hand menus, including the wrist options. So if you touch the left wrist, you will have options dealing with the environment, your citations, references, and space, and all of that good stuff. If you touch your right wrist, you will manage the cube. So for instance here, I tap the right wrist and the cube disappears. So now we're left with the kind of references and media in the middle here, and all kinds of ideas for how we can interact in the space. For instance, we can use a hand menu per finger, or maybe each finger has a submenu. We have the idea of a tool belt, where you can literally look down and pull up something. You can have HUD, or you can change glasses, so you have different overlays. There could be a floating control panel that you can move where you want. There could be a gadget. To me, that was exciting because I thought of like a joystick in space, or you can change gloves, so you can have different hand menus depending on what you're doing. I had two screenshots of the controls in Author's Map. Not that we're doing that at all. It's just a hint of the basic complexity. There's a lot of things in a map view. And map views, of course, can get very, very messy. So it's important that we have the right kinds of interactions for that at least. So brief glossary. A binder in this context is a type of folder or bounded set of documents such as a journal, proceedings, etc. That's kind of important because you don't necessarily want 30 papers from a specific conference in front of you. You may want to have it combined into a binder. The cube, as we've already discussed, is a knowledge object in the workspace. It is the thing that you are making. A knowledge object can basically be anything, but for our purposes, it'll generally be a reference to some kind of a document or source. An annotation is what the user has written or marked a knowledge object with as a kind of a summary or evaluation, depending on what they're doing. If it's a summary, it'll be appropriate for an annotated bibliography. The workspace is everything except for the cube. That is a separate thing. That's why we have different controls on the right and left hand. So you can be entirely in an environment of sources, references, and so on, and then you can be authoring when you want to. So here are some of the issues around dealing with the environment or the references in space. One of them is space management. How do you change the workspace? For instance, if you want to be in a map view or a timeline view, and how do you change within how that is laid out? You should be able to set global layout options in here. For instance, if it's a timeline, the direction or colors you're using, the appearance of objects, presentation styles. You should also be able to hide and show things by different categories, by author, title, and so on. And you should be able to select things, which is difficult. Sometimes it can be lasso or just pinch one yourself manually, or by category similar to show and hide. That's one issue we need to decide. I personally like the idea of this being related somehow to our bodies and hands. So we also have relationship management. As you saw earlier with the Brown walkthrough of Author's Map, when you select stuff, things can appear. Do we show lines? Do we not show lines? These are things that we need to discuss. Many further options listed here. When you follow a link, what does that mean? Does it open up like a web link to somewhere else? Or does it take that stuff that is linked to and open it in the current space you're in? These are options we have now. And if we look at the notion of the bind or folder, it gets a little complex because if you open up a journal, let's say Hypertext 25, what happens? How is it shown? Is it shown as a list? Is it shown as a kind of a map? What happens when you, excuse me, when you hide it again? Where does it go? How visually is it shown to the end user that there is more in here? Interaction issues. And then finally, when we're looking at, well, yeah, this is the same as the previous, it just is a bit messier there. How should the cube be constructed and interacted with? Lots of questions. We have 6 sides of a normal cube. Of course, it's non-Euclidean space, we can do what we want. We have to decide what to put on what side to begin with. Then there's a question of how to rotate it, how to unfold it, how to scale it, how to move it, how to add stuff to it, how do we sculpt, meaning how do we manipulate what's already there. And then similarly to previous, how do we follow connections that are in there? Do they appear outside? If we follow a link type of thing, does it appear inside or does it go away, etc.? Views, how do we change the views on each side? How do we explode full layouts into an environment so we can really read it big? How can we pull elements out of it to interact with in different ways? This is still a bit messy, still working on it. I hope to have a better view on Monday. So if you have anything to add or edit here, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you, massively large. Thank you.